What makes a good dance band? Take style out of it for a moment. Is there a difference between a band you love to listen to and a band you love to dance to? Today, I'm speaking with someone who thinks there's actually a pretty important difference. Welcome to Zeitgeist Radio, where we learn about musical subcultures from people in the scene. I'm Morgan Rowe, and today I'm speaking with a contra dance musician who not only has thoughts on listening versus playing, but might actually be able to help us understand why contra dancing is so hard to define. If you love this interview, be sure to subscribe. My guest today is Jeffrey Spero, a contra dance musician based in Southern California. Jeffrey, welcome to Zeitgeist Radio.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I'm very excited to talk with you. I've been contra dancing for many, many years, since I was 8 years old.
Wow.
So I'm really excited to get into the music part of it with you. I would love to hear from you. Who are you musically? How would you describe yourself, and what's your history with music?
Well, I started playing piano when I was about 5, I suppose. My parents would take me to musicals that were happening in the park. I grew up in Kentucky, and so they would take me to the musicals there, and I would come home and I'd just plunk out the melodies with one finger on the piano. And my parents, who were mostly tone deaf, were amazed that I could do that. And so starting at age 6, they put me in lessons for piano. I cheated. I don't know. My teacher must have caught on after 6 years of piano lessons, or 7 years of piano lessons with her, that she would play whatever it was that she wanted me to read, and then she'd put the music down, and I'd be able to play it pretty well because I heard it.
You have a good ear.
I've always had a good ear, and
Wow.
to this day, the idea of sitting down and looking at a score and seeing two staffs and multiple notes at the same time and thinking that someone could actually just read that in time blows my mind. I can't even come close to that. And so she taught me for about 6 or 7 years, and then I knew I just wanted to develop my ear, and I started listening to the radio. Well, I mean, I had been listening to the radio before, but in that age, and I'm going to date myself now, there were lots of really wonderful piano players in popular music. Elton John, Billy Joel. I mean, there's just a lot of wonderful piano music. And I sat down and started to figure that stuff out myself, and listen to a lot of James Taylor because his chord progressions are so incredible. They sound so easy, and they are really not. And listened to a lot of stuff like that and started playing that. And that's really been the main influence on how I play now.
Wow. And when did you first get introduced to contra dancing?
Uh, that would have been in 1989, I suppose. Uh, a very, very close friend of mine from Kentucky was coming out, and she contra danced there, and she wanted to contra dance out here, and I had heard of it before, uh, but I'd never actually danced, and I wasn't just going to drop her off for 3 hours and then come back and pick her up. So
Yeah.
she said, "Come a half hour early, do the lesson," and I was hooked. I was hooked immediately.
I question, but I'm always curious how people do answer this. How would you describe contra dancing for people who don't know?
It's a very difficult question. I For people who
It's
don't
hard.
know, what I like to say, and whether it's true or not, who knows? But what I like to say is that when people came over from Europe, from Scotland and Ireland and England and France and Germany, they brought their dance forms with them, uh, and America being the melting pot, those that went south, they combined them into something called square dancing, which everyone has heard of. And those that went north combined the same dance forms into something that we call contra dancing, which practically no one has heard of. But in my opinion, is a lot more fun than square dancing.
Actually, have I don't know if you know Lindsay
Of
Dono.
course.
Yes, I had her on several episodes ago. I'll link in the comments, but um, she pointed out that She straight up calls it the most fun you can have in 3 hours.
Yep.
And she points out that it ticks your physical like exercise, it your social connection, and your mental stimulation because you're having to follow and keep track and count, do some minimal counting.
It's also a really one of the things that I really loved about it very early on was that for a person who it's funny because as a caller and musician, most people do not realize that I have social anxiety, but I do. And contra dancing is a great way to be social in a very safe environment.
Yes. It's smiling people coming at you for 3 hours is one of the ways I describe it. I feel like this is a good point to ask you to describe the bands that you're in right now. The Syncopaths being the one that I'm most familiar with.
I would say the Syncopaths is the one that most people are familiar with. When I say most people, we're talking in this tiny pond, but in that tiny pond, the Syncopaths of all the bands that I'm in is the most well known. It features Ryan McCassin, our fiddler. He, as you might be able to tell from his name, has a Scottish background. Uh, and along with Ashley Hoyer, who lives in Southern California as well. Ryan lives up in Washington. Ashley is on mandolin. Krista Birch is our singer and bowron player. Bowron is an Irish drum. And then I play piano, and sometimes I play a little bass. And when I say a little bass, I mean it's about, it's a small bass, but it's got a nice deep tone. And the band loves to make fun of me because of the size of the bass.
Little bit. I'm interested on the musical side of why it's so hard to define. For those of you who don't know, if you walk into a contra dance, you'll see some lines. You generally have a partner. You don't have to come with a partner. And someone will be telling you what to do the whole time, so you don't need to know what to do. That would be the caller's side, which Jeffrey also does. And there's almost always live music. And that's pretty phenomenal. I know that's not true in all communities, but most contra dance communities will have a live band. So as a dancer, as a new dancer, you don't have to know any of them.
Nope.
As a caller and a musician, there are some things that you know and follow behind the scenes, and I'm so excited to dig into these. So, let's talk form really quick. What is the form of a dance, and how long generally does it go?
Typically, and when I say typically, we're talking 99% of the time. So a very strong typically. The dance form is 32 bars, 64 beats. Usually, 2-2 is the time signature. So 64 beats, and it's divided up into 16 beat phrases. So you have the first phrase is the A part, and most typical in contra dance is you'll have an A part which is 16 beats, and then that repeats for another 16 beats. And that's half the dance right there. And then there's a different melody for the B part, 16 beats or 8 bars, and then that repeats as well. And so it's typically thought of as A1, A2, B1, B2. And you'll find some songs or some tunes, I guess, that are A, B, C, D or A, B, C, or and there are some tunes that are A, B, C, C, but there are very few dances that are written that are not 32 bars, 64 beats.
I always thought that it was based on time. A dance is around 15 minutes. How long do you know how to play? When do you know how to stop? When do you know when to stop?
When the caller tells us to, we stop. There's after a while you get a feel for it, and a lot of it is based on the size of the hall, how many dancers are there. As a caller, you don't want a dance to go on too long. You don't want it to go on too short. And so you look and you see how many people are in the line, and you let everyone. We'll get into a little bit of form about contra dancing. Contra, meaning against,
Right.
although we don't really call it anti-dancing, but still, there's one couple. You're lined up in a long line, and there's one couple that is heading one direction, and another couple that's heading the other direction. And you dance with that couple. And by the end of one time through the dance, which is about 45 seconds or so, you've switched places. And this couple continues to go that direction with the next couple, and this couple continues to go that direction with the other couple. Uh, and so you get to dance with everyone in your long line. Callers usually want to make sure that you get all the way down one set and maybe a quarter to a halfway back. And so, as a musician, we often play medleys, not just one tune for contra dance. So when we switch, I'm looking to see around how long the dance has been going, how long I expect it's going to be going based on the length of the line, and we either do two or three tunes, and I will adjust when to switch tunes based on really the amount of dancers in the hall, how long the lines are.
So do you know in advance from the caller kind of what their norms are? Like how do they prefer the long, like all the way down quarterback or all the way down all the way back?
And no, I think most callers are pretty standard on that. I can get a feel from the caller on the first dance whether the caller tends to call a little shorter than I expect or a little bit longer than I expect.
Sure. Okay, so then the type of tunes that you do all over the world, right? I used to think it was Irish music, and it is,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a lot more. Can you get into that?
Yeah, so I was saying earlier that the dance forms originated from Europe, and those that went south created square dance. And again, I may just be making this up, but it sounds good, so I'll go with it. And the music did the same thing. The people who went south created tunes that are called old time tunes or southern tunes, and that's what you would stereotypically hear at a square dance. But you can also hear those at a contra dance. Those that went north created, I know this is going to sound weird, northern tunes, which can be more traditional contra dance. You hear a lot of traditional contra dances that were written way back have traditional northern tunes that go with them.
So can you do, what does that mean, a Northern American tune?
I was really afraid you were going to ask that, to ask me to describe the difference between a southern tune and a northern tune. Instrumentally, they're similar. Southern tunes are going to be much more based on fiddle and banjo in many ways. Northern is, boy, I may get some disparaging remarks for saying this, but not as twangy. There is typically more guitar, mandolin, piano. Not so much piano in southern tunes, but definitely piano in northern tunes. Not always, but much more common. So they have a different sound. As far as the melody, they are different, but I can't begin to describe how they are different.
Sure.
Also, the names will tell you the difference too. The names of the tunes. Like if you have a tune called, let's go with some animal names. A northern tune would be Dancing Bear, and a southern tune would be Nail That Catfish to a Tree.
Right.
Using my Kentucky accent there.
And those are two actual tunes, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Turkey in the Straw.
Yeah, that's a southern tune. Yep.
It's one that many people might know.
Yeah.
I feel like the southern tunes, for some reason, I have encountered more, which is funny because not in dance, just in like I can sing you Turkey in the Straw. I don't know if I could sing you Dancing Bear. Do I know Dancing Bear? I don't think so.
Well, I think a lot of that is because square dancing kind of became the American dance form. And
Yeah.
we were all taught, when I was in elementary school, I was taught square dancing. And when you're taught square dancing, you are taught those tunes that are also Southern tunes. We weren't taught contra dancing when I grew up. And I don't think it's just because I'm from Kentucky. I think that nationally, people
Yeah.
learn square dance and hear square dance tunes, and so they know that music. They don't really know the northern music that much.
Yeah. So there are Irish influences too, right? I'm not totally crazy.
You're not crazy in the least. At least not about that. I don't know about other things, but yes, there are Irish influences. There's Scottish influence. There's Quebecois. There's Cape Breton. Uh, yeah, the contra dance music takes its sound from a whole bunch of different influences, which is why it's very difficult to describe what contra dance music sounds like because it sounds like a whole bunch of different genres combined together in many ways to create its own genre.
The Syncopaths, I don't know how much you want to toot your own horn. It's a phenomenal band.
Thank you.
What makes a phenomenal contradance band?
Well, that's something I think you might be able to answer. If you think we're a phenomenal band, what makes us a phenomenal band? I can tell you when I'm listening to dance music, what appeals to me.
What inspires you when you're working?
I think what makes a phenomenal contra dance band isn't necessarily what makes for a really good band to listen to.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying don't buy our CDs. Obviously, I think when it comes to our CDs, we're playing contra dance style music, but we're playing it for listening audiences. For actual contra dance, matching tunes to dances, I think, is very, very important. Very, very few contra dances have specific tunes that go with them. And so it's always up to the band to match from whatever repertoire they have to match to the moves of the dance. And the caller can either describe the dance to the band or the band leader or show the moves to the band beforehand. And when the caller's teaching the dance, the band is scrambling behind the scenes to try to figure out, okay, what tunes that we know would fit this dance really well. And if they do a really good job of that, and there's variety in the way they play, I think that's what makes a phenomenal contra dance band. If they play everything the same way, and it's just, Now I say that, and I realize that now my old time or Southern tune band friends and bands are going to look at me and say, "What, you don't like the way we play?" Because typically in Southern, you play it the same way every time, and there is a real value to that as well. You can get on the contra dance train and just keep moving, and you're not even really, to be honest, you're not really thinking about the music that much. It's just propelling you along in a straight path, and that's fine too. I like that too. An entire evening of it, not really my taste, but some people love that, and more power to them. For me, I like it when each medley sounds different and matches the dance intentionally, and you can do that through tempo. You can do that through key change. You can do that through dynamics and style. There's a whole bunch of different ways to engage the dancers. And when I feel the feedback from the dancers, this loop that goes between the music and the dance, and the musicians and the dancers, you can feel when they're getting what it is you do. Mm-hmm. And that's just wonderful.
I mean, it's wonderful as a dancer to be so supported that way and kind of be like, for me, like a good contra dance band, I don't feel like I'm counting. I feel like I'm being guided, like more of an energetic thing into a move, and then there's a big build up and bam, you're there, and it's a balance and swing or whatever it is. It's interesting that you said that you're putting together the medleys while the walkthrough is happening, because I've seen the band members talking. I don't know what they're saying, and I always assumed that you had a set list that you brought.
We do. And the Syncopaths, at least, have our set list is divided into reels and jigs, which are the most common music to be played at a contra dance. Reels being in 2/2 or 4/4 or 2/4, and jigs in 6/8. And our set lists are divided into reels and jigs, and then subcategories bouncy A parts, bouncy B parts, smooth A's, smooth B's. Sometimes you need, on rare occasion, a very specific thing, like where there's a very bouncy move, but not at the top of the phrase. It could be 4 beats in. And then if you divide it into bouncy, well, bouncy is usually at the top of the phrase. So you have another subsection in your list of where is it bouncy after 4 beats in. So there, but then, on top of that, there's, well, what did we just play? We don't want to play anything that sounds anything like that. And so there's, and we're pretty lazy. Our set list hasn't been updated in a long time. So we have a lot of new tunes that we like to play. And so then there's all this discussion that goes on behind the scenes. And a lot of bands, if it's an old time band, their set list is usually set up more like key of G, key of A, key of D. And then you have to go through all of those and figure out, okay, which one might fit the dance better.
One thing you mentioned I want to come back around to is you mentioned tempo as being one of the things you can play with. How does that work? Because the dancers have to keep going at relatively the same the speed of their steps.
Actually, they don't. The You can play anywhere. I mean, the Cincos have occasionally played without having the caller say, "You guys got to speed up." We can play down to about 100 beats per minute. We can play up to 124, sometimes 128 beats per minute, and the dancers will adjust.
Even within a medley, you will switch?
Oh no, not in a
Okay.
medley. No, that would be per dance, and we try to keep the tempos relatively constant in a medley.
And it's nice because sometimes if you do a really vigorous, faster one, it's nice to kind of have a slower,
Yeah.
smoother
There are
next
times in a
dance.
medley where when we switch tunes that we will speed up. If a caller is telling us, go faster, and it's near the time that we are getting ready to switch tunes, we will keep it at the slower tempo, and then on the tune switch, we'll bump it up. And often the dancers really love that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That is very fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're not going to bump it from 100 to 128, but we could go 4 beats per minute faster at a tune switch, and that can create a lot of excitement.
Who guides that? Is that you? Piano?
Typically, it's the loudest instrument. Yeah, that's me. Rhythm, the rhythm. I mean, all the instruments really are rhythm instruments. You
Hmm.
can do a dance solely by fiddle alone, but the piano is really the biggest, boomiest rhythm instrument. So if I'm playing, I'll make sure that we get that tempo.
So you must have a very good internal metronome.
I have a great internal metronome. It's called Live BPM. It sits on my phone on the. Uh, it's there are apps that will tell you what BPM you're going at any given moment, and that's very helpful. That being said, yeah, I try to keep the tempo as steady as I can.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Um, you mentioned jigs and reels. I have a list here from a project we did previously of a couple others. I'm not going to go into all of them, but there are many kinds of music that gets played, and a couple of them I want to ask you about. Rags. When would you play a rag at a contra dance?
Yeah, when we say rags, we're not necessarily talking ragtime. There are rags that there's one called East Tennessee Blues, I believe it's called. You can do a search for that, and there's some other rags. Ragtime Annie is another relatively popular one in this genre. There's a specific move in contra dance called contra corners that I like to play rags for because there's a lot of movement in it, but the dance the movement of contra corners I think is kind of hard to describe, sassy maybe, and the rags that we play I think match that very well. They're kind of silly, kind of sassy, so I would I like to play rags for dances that have contra corners in them.
Do you think as a dancer when you're putting together this type of list? Or do you think as a musician? Like, how do you decide? Because I feel like the music is what makes it sassy. Or do you think as a dancer like the move is sassy, or do you think the music makes it sassy?
That's a really good question. Uh,
I'm glad you understood it because I feel like I confused myself.
no, no, no. You explained it well. As a musician, I think of certain moves as having certain values, I suppose. We have something called long lines forward and back, and it's four steps forward, bum, 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 back, two, three, four. And I think of that as a percussive move. There are moves we have that I consider are smooth moves. There's something called a hey for four. That's just kind of a walking, weaving, it's like you're doing a figure eight on the floor kind of thing. And I think of that as smooth. Contra corners I think of as playful or sassy, and so yeah, it's all part of getting the music to match the dance. And so I try to find music that I would also consider really playful and or sassy. And I think of the tunes that are rags typically as that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think what you just said about getting the music to match the dance is part of also what makes a great contra dance band because like you mentioned, there's not a standard. Like I had some folk dancers on recently. The minute a folk dance starts, they know what steps to do. Like this, the dance is the music and the steps.
Right.
That's not true in contra dance. And I feel like the choices made by the band, the same dance could be called and be drastically different.
Definitely. Yes, I have seen that in action. I'm also a dance choreographer for Contra, and I have seen dances that I've written played by different bands completely differently. And
Yeah.
yeah, the dance has a very different feel depending on how it's played, how the music is.
Jeffrey taught a workshop I attended on contradance music recently, and he played examples of each of these styles of music. I'll put some links and more information in my newsletter if you want to hear them. When he played the northern styles, dancing bear, not nail a catfish to a tree, I had to laugh and say, it sounds like NPR. Turns out, not only does NPR use a lot of northern folk styles in their stings and interlude audio, they've actually used the syncopaths music. If you're enjoying this conversation, please take a moment to like Zeitgeist Radio on Facebook or Instagram, or if you're really loving it, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website at zeitgeistacademy.com/radio. I send out content about cool things I learned from my guests. Now, back to Jeffrey. I know there are some dances that are called a lot. And as a caller, you probably know like these are the more popular dances. These are done a lot. As a musician, when you see that programmed, or if you know the caller is going to call that one, how do you approach that? If you're like, this dance is always, happy or sassy, will you sometimes intentionally flip that and play something different? Because every other time they call it, it's going to be done a different way.
I rarely play the same tune for the same dance, mostly because I have a really horrendous memory, and I don't remember what I've played for any dance in the past. So I will just choose something on my repertoire, and the truth is, with the different dances or different bands that I'm in, we all have different repertoire. So I may play with one band, for dance A, I may play one of three or four tunes, and then with another band, I would play three or four tunes, maybe one or two, maybe would be the same thing that I would play with the other band. So yeah, I don't typically play the same tunes for the same dances just because the musicians that I play with may or may not know those tunes, and I have no idea what I've played in the past. And there aren't a whole lot of dances that I think that get called all that often. There are so many contra dances, and now that I think about it, the truth is, when a caller hands me the card that has the choreography on it, I hardly ever look at the name. I'm
Ah,
just looking at the moves. So it is very possible that I have played or have not played the same tunes for the same dances because
right.
I don't know what dances are being called pretty much in any given night. And at the end of the night, if someone were to say, "Can you name any of the dances that were called?" Typically, my answer is no,
No.
no. I can say, "Oh, well, there's this dance that had this move and that move and that move," and but I can't. I won't know what they are. Even if they're ones that I've written, I don't even look and see that either.
I love this. Uh, I love this because it's kind of turning on my head what I thought you were gonna say. It's a lot more improvisatory
Yes, yes.
within, like, obviously the tunes are the tunes, and you work those up in a style like you would, like any musician. I know my audience is a lot of musicians, amateur more, but they generally know how to work up a piece. So there's that which is familiar. But then the choice of what is played sounds like it's based on the feel of the night.
Well, even the choice of how to play it. We keep coming back to the syncopaths, but I will say that our last gig was in February, and then one of our band members, not me, had a baby. I did not get pregnant, and so we've been out of commission since February, and we don't have another gig until November. So that's a long time to not play together, and what most likely will happen is that some of the band members will have come across some other tunes or maybe even written some tunes between now and then and will bring them to the band. We don't rehearse.
I was going to ask that.
Most of the band members, well, our two melody players read music like crazy. They can sight read beyond belief. So maybe before the dance, by ear, we'll teach a tune to each other, but we don't know how it's going to sound until we get on stage and play it. And the way we play it on one dance may be completely different than the way we play it at another dance, depending on our mood, depending on the dance we're playing it for, depending on the people in the room. We don't really, the only time we really rehearse is when we're getting ready to go into a recording studio and we want to get arrangements down for recording. And even then, there's improvisation in the studio as well. When we do our arrangements for studio, it's like, okay, we'll do this here. Okay, this time through, you take a lead. Okay, and then this next time through, let's do this harmony line, and then we can figure that out. But there's always, you take a lead, and we'll see what happens during the studio. So improvisation is very, very important in almost every aspect of playing for dances, at least the way that the bands that I'm in play.
Yeah. Let's talk about another part of the night. Most every dance I've ever been to, you have 90 minutes, 2 hours, maybe however long of dancing, and then there's a break, and usually a waltz at the break, and then a final waltz. That's a very popular point. Where I That's actually how I met my husband. We were waltzing at Folklife, and it's a time when two dancers can connect and maybe talk a little more than during the lines. So how do you approach the waltzes in the middle as a break or as a chance to play around a little more, show off, take it solo, like because it's not so much the focus of the collar and the dancing and everything. It's a little more freeform.
Well, the choice of the waltz for, at least with the syncopaths, almost always comes down to our singer,
Mm.
Krista, and what she feels like singing at any time. We're fortunate in that band to have a woman with an incredible voice, and every other band that I'm in, the waltzes are instrumentals, but in that band,
Mm-hmm.
the singer chooses the waltzes. I think the waltz is actually similar to the other dances in the way that we approach them. In that, you said that during a waltz, you're able to talk more. You're able to, you met your husband during a waltz, and you're able to communicate and talk, which you can't do during a contra dance because there are specific moves and the caller is calling. And so you have to pay attention to that. And I think musically, the same thing applies that in a contra dance, I like to say that people don't listen to the music. And they don't, because if they're actively listening, they're not paying attention to the dance and they're not paying attention to their partners. They're not paying attention to their neighbors. If you're paying too much attention to the music, you're not able to dance. So we try to create a feel and people feel the music. And I think it's the same thing for the waltzes as well, because people aren't paying attention to the music because they're paying attention to their partner and they're talking to their partner. So we feel that we provide a feel for the dancers to dance to, and in most bands that I'm in, we just play whatever we feel like playing. For us in the Syncopaths, Krista really tries to gauge the arc of the evening and what dancers may want at any given time for the waltzes. And so that's much more tailored to the dancers.
In Montana, where I started dancing, they also had a schottisch. And then I moved to Portland, where they did a hambo. I don't know what they do in SoCal, but is there?
We used to do berets,
It's lovely.
but occasionally a hambo. But typically these days, it's just a waltz and then that's it.
Interesting. So let's switch to some of the other. So we're leaving Ireland and Scotland behind. Let's go to something that I was not aware of until we did this other project recently, where you brought up some of the French Canadian influence.
Yeah.
Cape Breton and Quebecois music. Can you explain? I feel like most people will not have interacted with those two. Can you explain what that is a little bit, and then how you might use it in a dance?
Trying to explain music is so difficult for me.
Sorry.
It's really, really, no apologies needed. I would say Quebecois music is typically exceedingly happy, except when it isn't. So I know that's very helpful.
I love it.
But there's a real lift to it. Breton music has a lot of Scottish influences to it. If you're looking for, just do do a Google search for Quebecois. You can either search for bands, Quebecois bands, and then listen, or tune names like Reel de Saint Antoine is a very popular Quebecois tune. If you want to go to the Quebecois dark side where it's not happy, there's one called Evite Gabrielle, and you can search for that. If you're looking for Cape Breton music, Natalie McMaster, she's a good one to search for. She's just a wonderful fiddler, probably the most popular Cape Breton fiddler that's out there.
Again, in this other project we were doing, you were sharing examples of each of these, and it's obvious. Like when folks, if you go listen to it, you'll be like, oh, okay.
Right. The interesting thing about contra dance is that, for example, there was a dance week that I played, and I played with a fiddler from Montreal. And he was a Quebecois fiddler, brilliant. And the way that I played was very different. And I didn't even know that was going to be the case. But he sat down and played, and as an accompanist, you try to match what the lead instrument is doing. And so my style of playing was completely different. And then for a contra dance, I could play the exact same tune with my contra dance musicians, and I would play it very differently because the other musicians in the band aren't Quebecois fiddlers. They are contradance musicians. And
Mhm.
so the same tune will sound very different in a contradance setting, which is why I say it's we have our own genre of music. We
Yeah.
take we Americanize everything, you know. So yeah, if you really want to know what a Quebecois 2 sounds like, make sure you listen to it by a Quebecois fiddler or a Quebecois
Right.
band, not a contradance band.
Yeah. Um, let's switch into if somebody is interested in becoming a musician to play at contra dances. Maybe they grew up dancing, they want to expand, or maybe they don't feel like they are a good dancer, but they like the community or whatever. Um, how would you recommend that they start? Because it's a little overwhelming. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of tunes. Um, yeah.
I would recommend starting by finding jam sessions in your neck of the woods, and most communities have them. Uh, and how do you find a jam session? You go to a dance and you ask the musicians there, and they'll be able to direct you to jam sessions. You ask dance organizers, do a search for contra dance or even old time music or Scottish music or Irish music, whatever style you're really interested in. Do a Google search for that in your community, and and that's another way of finding jam sessions. And then sit in the back and play along. If you play piano, God help you, because there's rarely pianos at jam sessions, and a lot of jam session musicians really don't want a piano because it can completely wreck a session if you're not sensitive, because we can be really loud, and typically if there's a piano there, it's the loudest instrument. So there's etiquette. Maybe sometimes, at the beginning, go to a session without an instrument, get the vibe of the place, and then next time come back with your instrument and sit in the back and just noodle along. There are also tune books if you like to read music to that will help you if it's contradance music you're interested in. There are three books called the Portland Collection 1, 2, and 3, and there are tons of contradance tunes in there. Waltzes, there are four books called the Waltz Book 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are Irish books, there are Scottish books. English country dance is another form very related to Contra. And there are three big English country dance books. The Barnes, it's called the Barnes Collection, the Barnes something, Barnes, books 1, 2, and 3 for English country dance. And that's another genre that is also a lot of fun to play is English country dance.
Do you find that musicians always dance or musicians don't like to dance or what's the like you do all of the things. Is that generally true of most?
No, not really. I think most of the bands that I know of, the musicians primarily play music. Some of them will dance on occasion,
Mhm.
but they're not avid dancers. Uh,
Because I'm thinking about some of these, if someone's interested in dancing, a lot of what you've talked about today has been uh, informed by the energy of the dance and knowing what the moves are and knowing when they fit together. I feel like that would be hard to do if you don't know how to dance.
yeah, it is. I always recommend to musicians who want to play for dances, get out on the floor and see what it feels like,
Mhm.
and that's your best way of understanding what it would be like to play for a dance and how to play for a dance effectively.
Yeah. And do you find there's a difference in musicians? Like there's dance weekends, which we probably don't even have time to get into. Um, I imagine the Syncopaths mostly plays for dance weekends and not necessarily for ye olde monthly contra dance in some small community.
Well, since we're spread out really far, yeah, we need the pay for the dance weekends to be able to fly at least one of the members in, if not all four of us.
Hmm.
Occasionally, a special occasion, like if you want to come to Santa Barbara in November, we're playing a Santa Barbara dance, just a regular Sunday night dance in November.
Nice.
But yeah, typically we're much more of a weekend dance band.
I kind of wanted to talk about some of the communication and the signals behind the scenes. I love the behind the scenes stuff because in every musical community, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes to create the experience of whatever it is. And I love kind of hearing all those things. Um, can you talk a little bit? You've talked about the moves and seeing the cards, but live during the dance, what type of communication do you have? You mentioned maybe speeding up. Are there other things that the caller might communicate to you, or vice versa? Can you be like, "Hey, caller, we need to stop, or we need to keep going," um, to make sure that you're on the same page and giving the best experience to the dancers?
Absolutely. Uh, there are most of the communication happens prior to the dance, where the caller will say, you know, my cues are speed up, slow down, or slow down, and then the caller will have hand signals for us, uh, about how to proceed during a dance. You know, those signals can come into play. Very rarely will we communicate with a caller. A caller will typically tell us what they want, and we're there to serve the dance. And the caller is the MC. The caller is the leader. The caller is the one who has eyes on the dancers constantly, and so we are there to serve the dance through the caller. Most likely is that's the way I like to think of it, at least. If we're in a three dance medley, and we were talking at the beginning of how to gauge how long to play,
Yeah.
and if we have just switched into a third tune and the caller says one more time, doesn't really give us time to get into that tune, and so I will sometimes look at the caller and go three, and almost always the caller will say yes. Conversely, if we've been playing a tune forever and I've misjudged, or the caller's just spaced out and is
Right.
letting the dance just keep going, going, and going, and then we're done, and the caller looks and says three more times, I might say, "Is one okay?" And the caller will always say yes, and then we finish up. Uh, in playing for a dance, there's like an arc that we like to follow so that we can end big. Typically, I mean, sometimes we like to end really soft, but typically the last time through the dance, we like to cue the dancers that it's the last time through by building, building, and building, and building, and building, and then when you come to that A1 at the beginning of the last time through, bam, it's huge, and the dancers think, okay, wake up, this is the last time through. So sometimes we have to work with the caller during the middle of the dance to be able to achieve that, but that's kind of rare.
Yeah. I've had it also the opposite where there's like false endings in the music. What's happening there?
It's often, and I'm guilty of that. I'm in bands that have been guilty of that. What's happening there is that sometimes we look for one of the musicians we think is going to take the melody, take the lead, and they don't. And all
Oh,
of a sudden, there's like an emptiness, and it feels like, oh, that was it. Oh no, keep going, keep going, keep going. Or we're going. Sometimes, when I say that you can adjust things by dynamics. Well, if you're doing a sudden dynamic shift between very loud to very soft, sometimes it can sound like you're going from regular to nothing.
to nothing.
Yeah. And so it's important, you know, that there's enough there for the dancers to grab onto. And yeah, but when it does happen, that the dancers kind of stop and don't realize that the music keeps going, it can be very funny. And the dancers try to scramble and the musicians laugh, and that's the thing that I love about contra dancing is that it's we're all there to have fun. We're not there to do it right, and things happen, things happen, and so I like the phrase "enjoy the chaos you create." You know,
Yes, I always like to say that it's messy in the best way. Like it's making a mistake is so not a big deal most of the time.
and especially as a musician, making a mistake is even less of a big deal because, as I said, the people aren't listening. People are feeling, and so if you I never say a wrong note. If you hit a note that you did not intend to hit, it's no big deal. In fact, sometimes if I do that, I'll do it again and I'll do it again and I'll make fun of myself and it just becomes very, very funny.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Do you know what zeitgeist means?
Oh, zeitgeist, I certainly know the word. I could probably even use it in a sentence, but could I actually define it? Probably not.
That's fine. Most people can't. It's German. It means spirit of the times. It's often used like broadly for cultural, the zeitgeist of an era.
Yeah, I think if I were to have defined it possibly incorrectly, I would have said the feeling of something.
Yeah, exactly. It's the feeling of something. So I like to use it for music, like the feeling of a scene or the feeling of like every musical community feels different. And for me, with I have an anthropological background, and I love that kind of idea of using it. I've coined a term just because I don't know, I haven't heard anyone else describe it, of a zeitgeist moment, which is when you are involved with some musical scene and you just like plug into that broader feeling. And so I'm going to ask you, what was a recent or a memorable zeitgeist moment? And while you're thinking about it, I'll share one with you. Um, Up in Portland, they have an New Year's dance, a New Year's Eve dance every year. And there was, I believe it was the Great Bear Trio that was playing at this particular time. Um, a phenomenal band as well. And at one point, they started playing um, some Beatles medley.
That sounds like Great Bear.
And at one point, that this dance is pretty big for Portland. The hall was packed, North Hall up in Portland, absolutely packed. And the whole hall was dancing. This was well into the dance. Most of the people were very if you're showing up New Year's Eve at 11 o'clock at night, you probably are pretty committed to contra dancing. So everyone knew what they were doing. They all knew the moves. It was well into the night. And the whole floor started singing na 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 na, and they're dancing, and it was just such a plug-in moment for me, where all of us, like everyone, was just sharing this moment, and it was very cool. And we've talked about jigs and reels and Quebecois and all this folk music, and by the way, you can also play pop music.
Right.
So that was a very cool moment that I had related to contra dance, where I felt like just kind of part of something bigger than myself. So I would love to hear either a memorable or a recent. I know there's so many, but if there's one you'd like to share.
I think mine is it's not as much with the entire community as it is with the feel of locked in
Yeah,
to contra dance music.
yeah.
The first time the Syncopaths ever played, and that was we had no rehearsal. Some of the band members met each other at the gig,
Love that.
and we were playing in a packed hall in Brentwood, California, in the suburb of LA, and I had been looking for a band that was going to be different. Most of the bands in LA were the same people in different configurations. And I found Ryan and Krista at a festival where I was playing. And actually, no, now that I think about it, I found Krista there. Ryan and Krista and I were a background band. We had one rehearsal for a very famous bluegrass fiddler, Richard Green. We had one rehearsal and Richard said, no, we're done. But I picked up Ryan and Krista and then another musician who I knew, who I'd been playing with in Santa Barbara, to form the Syncopaths. And Ryan and Krista knew each other, but the other musician had never met either Ryan or Krista. And so we're sitting down, we're playing the first gig that the band had ever played. Small hall, packed, tons of excitement. And all of a sudden, for the first time ever, the musicianship clicked in and we were playing with one voice. And the electricity in the hall, I have never seen it that excited, that much excitement in the hall as when we were playing our first gig there. And I just knew at that point that I needed more. I needed more of this. And so, yeah, that was just a huge moment. I didn't know that Contra dance music could be like that until I got these musicians together and we played, and it was the electricity was huge. Our first CD was actually recorded without rehearsal at our fourth and fifth gigs ever, because I wanted to bottle that energy from early on.
That's amazing. I love that. My first ever dance weekend was Bear Hug in Montana when I was 13. And that was phenomenal for dancing reasons. But I have to say, dancing...
It's also a beautiful venue, by the way.
I love that you've been there. Yeah.
I've played Bear Hug.
It is stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most scenic of all the dance weekends that I've been to. But for music, I would say Dancing Fool up in Seattle. The talent in that area is very silly. And the bands, I didn't know that bands could be like that.
Yeah.
And the music just absolutely, you just lose yourself as a dancer. You're so relaxed and you just are swept. The energy of the room is driven by, it's like I'm on a bed or something, of like being swept along. Also the collar talent is very good too. And just the pairing of a very good caller with a very good band. There's really nothing like it.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Jeffrey, thank you for coming on my podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Zeitgeist Radio, and thanks to Jeffrey for joining me. All his links are in the episode description. Please check them out and give him a follow. Please follow me too at Zeitgeist Academy on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And don't hesitate to reach out with a Zeitgeist moment of your own. I always love to hear from fellow music lovers. Thanks for listening.